Good evening. I thought I'd do my favorite subject tonight on something I've always found interesting, parallels to something I've always found historically interesting, and that's the Spanish-American War. Was an 1898 conflict between the United States and Spain. I've attached also a PowerPoint for your review to follow me through afterwards of my presentation. And it was between Spain and the United States that ended the colonial rule in the Americas and resulted in the United States picking up several territories in the Western Pacific and Latin America. We're going to talk about some of the American support. We're going to talk about some of the causes of the war, American support for the ongoing struggles by the Cubans and Filipinos against Spanish rule, the mysterious explosion of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor. Yellow journalism was a style of newspaper reporting that emphasized sensationalism over facts. Today we call that fake news. I find it interesting that we had fake news even back then. They tended to, people like William Randolph Hearst tend to stretch make it more sensational so that people would get their passions up to go to war. And this war really made the United States a world power. It's the first war, probably after the Civil War, that we really had with a foreign power, except with Mexico, of course, that really put us on the world scene. But let's look at the origins of the war real quick. The Cubans were already struggling for independence from Spain, which began in February of 1895. We had a lot of investments in the country, which was the insurgency was causing some concern on our destruction of sugarcane and sugar mills that had some effect on our monetary interest. Under the Spanish commander, nicknamed the Butcher, Cubans were herded into so-called reconcentration areas in and around larger cities. And many of those died from exposure, hunger, and disease. These conditions really were blown out of proportion. They existed, but they were really blown out of proportion by Joseph Pulitzer,'s New York World and William Randolph Hearst's New York Journal. Now, they really wanted, the country was itching for something, and they really wanted to kind of flex their muscles. We had just got built this brand new big navy, and we really wanted to make an impression on Spain, so we sailed the Maine, USS Maine, into the harbor as a show of force. And we were still with good diplomatic relations at that time, until the Maine exploded. And of course, the U.S. blamed it on Spanish treachery or a bomb or a mine planted to sabotage for the destruction of the ship. They denied it, of course, and that, along with our freedom-loving people wanting to free the Cubans and the Filipinos, as the papers pushed it, is really what pushed us into the war. There was fighting mostly in Cuba and in the Philippines, and the rally cry was "Remember the Maine and the hell with Spain" was a very popular cry during this time. The parallels to, say, this war and the Gulf War or some of the other modern wars we've been in is how journalism and the media convinces the people of a certain issue or a certain policy that we need to follow, and pushes it to the point where we're so worked up over it until we find out all the answers. Later excursions of the Maine after the war, which didn't last very long, found out that the Maine probably blew up it was a coal-fired ship, probably blew up from a boiler explosion in its main coal bunker. But of course, that's not the excuse they used to go to war. They course, invaded Cuba, and they defeated the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay, and there was fighting on two fronts. The Spanish government was calling the horns for such a cool dilemma, or that we went to a peace process. We would that we made it clear that nothing less than independence for Cuba would be acceptable, and we demanded Puerto Rico and the Philippines as concessions from the Spanish. However, Spain still did not want to give up independence, but yielding to pressure. Spain had such decline, such as a world power to that time, that they just could not keep maintaining the war, and they finally got a termination of hostilities between the government of Spain and the people of Cuba, and it ended on April 20th of that year. The people of Cuba and are the right to be free and independent, and demanded Spain release